Hello there, World of Tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm of course your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video we are going to be talking about a new Battle Pass that is coming into World of Tanks Blitz. We're also going to be talking about what vehicles are getting PBR in Update 8.1, and finally, balance changes, which are going to be occurring for new vehicles and as well tanks that are already in the game. As always, if you enjoy this type of content, as I always try giving you guys the most relevant and newest information out as early as possible, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. But let's start off with the Battle Pass changes. In front of you is the Battle Pass we already have, and it's a pretty simple one. You complete missions, and it gives you points for the stages, and then once you finish the Battle Pass, you can get a couple free operation containers, which will give you a tank if you're lucky, but usually just certificates for a tier 6 Battle Pass tank that you might have missed. I don't really mind how the current Battle Pass is. It gives you 2,500 gold, 50,000 free XP, and I think 2 million credits or something like that. It's a really good way to get rewards even if you are a free-to-play player, because you don't need to purchase the Premium Pass Edition. You still get 200 gold when you finish it and a bunch of other rewards like tank certificates. So I think the Battle Pass is a great reward for people that just play this game, even if you are free to play. However, the new Battle Pass, I'm not exactly sure what the rewards are going to be, but I'm going to show you what my moderator wrote and the picture we have. So let's read it. New Battle Pass system. Though it looks like the Battle Pass will have 60 stages in this new format, and the max obtainable points is 72. The Battle Pass license will also allow you to replace one mission per week, get early access to following week's missions, and complete missions from weeks you've missed all at once. Judging by the wording, I'm assuming you will be unable to complete missions from weeks you've missed. This Battle Pass starts off in May, and it will kick off with a Hot Wheels collaboration. I'm excited to see what the Hot Wheels tank is going to look like. I'm hoping you guys are as well, because usually when Hot Wheels does a lot of collaborations, there's a lot of work put into it, so maybe this will be a tier 7? I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. In front of you, you can see the operation missions, and this is depending on what week you are on. So you can see some of the missions here. Be among the top 3 players on your team by damage dealt in 3, 9, or 23 battles. Earn mastery badges in class 3 or higher, deal 12,000 hit points of damage. So it's pretty simple on how these work. It tells you what you need to do it on: encounter battles, destroy tanks, supremacy. You need to do it of specific nations. And as well, it seems like if you own the Battle Pass, we've got a little replace thing here, which lets you change one or maybe even all of the missions. I'm not sure, but it seems like you can replace a mission that you don't want to do. You also get 3 missions, it looks like, for the Premium Pass, extra compared to the normal missions. You can see there's 3 little bars here, so each one of these bars are going to be filled out. So it says be among the top 3 players. So first of all, you do 3 battles, then 9 battles for the second stage, and then 23 for the final one. So this Battle Pass seems like there's a lot more effort put into it, but hopefully the rewards are much better. And maybe you can even get a tier 8. I guess we're going to have to find out. Other changes coming into the game, if we scroll down a bit, you can see that the Jagdpanzer E100, the Grill 15, and the, what is that, the Vickers Mark 1, or whatever the tier 1 is. Nobody really cares about that. But the Grill 15 and Jagdpanzer E100 are getting PBR, which is pretty sweet. As well, for balance changes in Update 8.1, we are going to be having the T92E1 and Vickers CR getting a nerf on their hit points from 1600 to 1500. It's not really a nerf that I think is going to affect either of these tanks, because what makes them strong is their gun, their mobility. Everything that goes well for them doesn't really affect their hit points all too much. So I wouldn't worry too much about the nerf if you're a Vickers CR spammer or a T92E1 enjoyer. But either way, those are the changes for 8.1. For the final segment of today's video, we are going to be talking about new tier 8s that were brought into the game and are currently in their testing process. Now, we've already talked about all 4 of these vehicles, being the T77, Type 57, the CS52 Lease, and the Titan 54D, but now I actually have these statistics to let you guys know how they are going to perform, in my opinion, and if they're going to be changed before they are finally released. So let's start off with the Titan 54D. By the way, you might be asking why I'm not going to go over the Scepter, and that's because it is statistically the same as the M3 Yo. The only difference is that the Scepter gets the reversing track mechanic, otherwise known as the reserve track. It's cool, lets you reverse at 5 kilometers per hour even if you are tracked, but it doesn't really make much of a difference, so I'm not going to go into the Scepter statistics when you can already look at it in your garage on the tech tree. So let's start off with the Titan 54D. Now, the Titan 54 is a 54 lightweight that is now turned into a medium medium tank, as you can see by its classification. It's an unidentified nation tank, which makes sense, and it's got moving armor just like the Titan HN at tier 7. So very interesting on that aspect. So let's start off with its hit points. Very low at 1380, so it'll be okay on that part, but it does a very nice view range at 302 meters. Damage per minute is pretty poor as well at around 2100, and that's with running gun rammer. So if you're running calibrated shells, ooh, you're below 2000 damage per minute. Yeah, this is not going to be a tank you're going to be pumping shells into your opponents with, but it does a very nice damage per shot at 310. So while its DPM is pretty poor, that alpha damage is going to come very nice and handy, even up against tier 9 mediums when you might need to trade with them. So I'm not all too mad about the DPM being bad, especially because it also has very nice standard pen at 207, and the premium pen at 270 is plenty to cut through anything. In fact, if you're running Cali, you have over 297 millimeters. So yeah, this is definitely a very beefy gun when it comes to your alpha damage and penetration. The HE is pretty bad. It's 350, which is only 40 more damage than the standard ammunition, so I wouldn't suggest to use it all too much, but hey, at least you have got very beefy standard damage. Shell velocity is pretty nice at 1015. That means you'll be able to snap shells, but you won't be able to snap shells all too easily because your dispersion isn't great. It's 0.14. That's the same as the 121B in tier 10, and I can tell you from experience, yeah, you'll be able to hit your shells on the move, but definitely not super easily, judging that your base dispersion is 0.335. Oh, and base aiming time at 1.69 seconds. Yeah, the gun handling on this vehicle, apart from the rotation of the turret, is very, very bad, and you're definitely going to have to sit still for at least 1 or 2 seconds to let your shells aim in before you're going to fire, and even then with that bad dispersion, shooting at any opponents from a decent distance, probably not going to go all too well. Depression, only 5 degrees. Oof, yeah, also not very good. Does have very nice gun elevation, but that's not going to mess with it too much. Traverse speed is great, though. Turret traverse is at 58 degrees a second, being the fastest turret in tier 8 for a medium tank. It's also quite a heavy vehicle at 35 tons. It's not the heaviest, but it is a light tank, so just in regards of it being normally a T-54 lightweight, it's a bit heavier. Goes 45 forwards and 19 in reverse, so frontal speed is meh, it's 45. I mean, that's definitely one of the slowest mediums in tier 8, but reverse speed isn't too bad at 19, but it's not great either. So yeah, mobility-wise, it's pretty poor, especially when you take a look at the power to weight only being 17.93. Although, weirdly enough, it has ridiculous turret traverse speed and ridiculous traverse speed on general at 64 degrees a second. It also has very good concealment at 32% while sitting still and 25% while moving, making it one of the better tanks with camouflage. In fact, when you're firing, you actually have the best camouflage for a tier 8 medium. So it's very weird overall, but let's talk about the armor profile. We have the picture of the armor when it is frontally slanted upward, and it's pretty good. I mean, you can see it's about 180 millimeters thick with the spaced armor being that little pinkish colored one, and that's not bad judging that's flat ground. If we use just a bit of gun depression, that's upwards of 207 millimeters. Angling it, it's going to be now about 214. As well, the turret is upwards of 200 millimeters thick, but I'm going to be honest, that's not crazy armor. I mean, it's good, 104 on the lower plate, but that's not anything really insane. I mean, it's a T-54 lightweight that just got more armor added onto the front, and 170 millimeters or 190 really isn't going to make much of a difference, especially because this is a consumable that only lasts for about 15 seconds and then it goes away. So then you're just going to have pretty bad armor all around. So it's a medium. Honestly, I think the T-54 Mod 1 is better than this tank because it's got better upper plate armor, it's got more damage per minute, better turret armor, and better mobility. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about the Titan 54D in the comments below, but to me, it seems pretty meh in my opinion. Moving on, we have a Polish Tier 7 medium tank known as the CS-52 Lis. Now, on World of Tanks PC, this is a Tier 8 medium. You can see just by the looks alone, it's very similar to a T-44. It also carries the same gun as a T-44 on World of Tanks PC, or at least very similar, same caliber. So in Blitz, it's a Tier 7, but it still carries the same caliber as it does on World of Tanks PC, meaning that it deals 290 damage per shot, the highest you'll get for a Tier 7 medium in Blitz. That's great. It does a massive amount of module damage at 150, but that's not to say there aren't drawbacks. First of all, it has terrible penetration at 158 on the standard, and the premium doesn't get much better. It's only sitting at 197. If we compare this to a vehicle like the T-34-1, which has very similar alpha at 280, it has around 240 millimeters of premium pen. So Yeah, premium pin on this tank is very, very lackluster. You might want to run calibrated on this tank. DPM is also pretty lackluster, but it has the alpha to make up for it. Just like the T-34-1, both of these tanks have so much alpha that you expect their damage per minute to be some sort of limited factor. Shell velocity, though, is very nice. 980 makes it the third best in Tier 7 for a medium, which is surprising because it is a very, very large shell. Which, yeah, you wouldn't think it would have that good shell velocity, but it does. Very, very nice. Aiming time is also great at 1.54 seconds, the second best in Tier 7. So this is looking right now like a sphere on its aiming time. It seems really, really nice on the gun, apart from that penetration, as well on movement dispersion. Ooh, 0.14, just like the Titan 54D we just talked about. So very bad on movement dispersion, and its base dispersion is 0.371. That is horrific. Like, that's E100 levels, and that's a 150 millimeter. So yeah, there are big downsides to get that alpha out. It also has a weird amount of gun depression, 6.2 degrees. I don't know why they didn't just give it 6, but hey, that 0.2 might give you just a little bit extra you might need on some sort of ridgeline. I think that's plenty of gun depression anyway for a Russian type design. Gun elevation is 20 degrees, which will be plenty, and turret traverse speed at 51 degrees a second will be enough to deal with any opponent you're coming up against. Mobility wise, it's actually eerily similar to the Titan 54D at 47 forwards and 19 in reverse. It's also got a very bad power to weight ratio at 17.04, making it one of the worst in Tier 7. It's got very poor traverse speed at 54 degrees a second, but it's also got very good camouflage at 30% while still and 23% while moving. So what do I think about this tank? Well, it seems pretty good. I mean, it's got alpha, and let's take a look at the armor. It's got also pretty good armor. As I said, it's based off of a T-44, so its upper plate on flat ground is 197. And yes, you're reading that right. This Tier 7 medium has better armor on its upper plate than, well, the Titan 54D is going to have in Tier 8. Kind of weird, especially because that one's supposed to have armor. So if you're using it hull down, that upper plate's upwards of 270. And the turret as well is 200 millimeters thick. You got to remember, this is Tier 7. So if you're fighting Tier 6s, there's no way Tier 6s are going to penetrate that upper plate. The lower plate, though, is quite a big weak spot. It's only about 100 millimeters thick, and you'll cut through that at really any angle. As well, the side armor is pretty weak. It's about 140 millimeters thick, unless you're shooting at the spaced armor, which will give you some bounces, but yeah, it's pretty weak all over the side. But yeah, frontally, that's really, really strong. It's got a rounded turret, so you're going to get a lot of auto ricochets on the edge of it. I'm really excited for this tank, because it's got armor, it's got decent gun depression, very nice alpha, but obviously it trades its mobility for all of these things and its damage per minute and accuracy. So it's a weird tank, but I'm excited for it. This one seems very, very solid. A lot of you already know that the Type 71 is currently in testing as a Japanese Tier 10 heavy tank, and it will be introduced into the game as part of a tech tree, probably within the next couple of updates or so. The Type 57 is going to be a Tier 8 Japanese premium tank, which should be introduced a little bit earlier, or at least around the same time as the tech tree is introduced into the game. So let's see what the statistics of it are going to be like. Hit points is 1800, which is pretty similar to a lot of Tier 8 heavy tanks, but you'll notice you can actually run sandbag armor on it. So that's pretty nice. You can run enhanced sandbag armor and bring yourself up to 1900 hit points. And then if you're running hit point buff, you can get up to 2000. So very, very beefy on the hit points. But let's take a look at it with the normal provisions of food and as well improved fuel. So it's got pretty okay DPM at 2099 because you'll notice it's very similar to other Russian 120 millimeters. What isn't the same is the alpha. It's 430. That makes it even higher than the Object 252 that carries 420. That's going to be really nice to penetrate through enemy opponents, especially with the 180 module damage. Woof. That is really, really beefy. So the damage is great. When you're firing heat shells, though, it drops quite a bit to 380 damage per shot. The HE, 570. That is really nice as well, especially with the 65 millimeters of penetration. So the gun on the tank looks very, very nice. But while the gun may look nice, we're going to take a look at the statistics of it. So dispersion factors while on the move are actually pretty good. It's 0.18. When we talk about mediums, 0.14 is bad. But for heavy tanks, you'll notice it's 6th place out of 39 heavies, making it quite accurate when we compare it to any other Russian 120 millimeter. But its dispersion at 0.38 is atrocious. And as well, the aiming time at 2.99 is making it one of the worst in Tier 8. So it's going to have atrocious aiming time. If you want that in actual blitz seconds, it's probably around 6 to 7 seconds of aiming time, very similar to an IS-3 Defender. Yeah, that's going to be very, very poor. Thankfully, because the on-movement dispersion is okay, at least you should be able to penetrate your opponents once you aim in for about 2 or 3 seconds at decent distances. It's got 9 degrees of gun depression, which is something is unheard of for Russian heavies and even the Chinese heavies. It's also got 20 degrees of gun elevation, so you'll be able to aim at anybody above you. It's got very good top speed at 39 kilometers per hour forward and 15 in reverse, although an average power to weight ratio of 13.02. By the way, this tank weighs 62 tons. It is a very, very heavy vehicle. Traverse speed is 29 degrees a second, which is pretty poor, and as well its concealment at 9% is terrible. But this is quite a large vehicle. Just on its dimensions alone, this is one of the larger tier 8s in the game at 6.89 meters by 3.56. So let's take a look at its armor profile, because this is the big part that makes it super strong. On flat ground, that upper plate is 319 thick. In other words, impervious to tier 8s and really any tier 9s. All of it is, by the way, impervious. Even the little hatch here, 90 millimeters, but everywhere else ranges upwards of 900. So good luck hitting that hatch. The lower plate is 160, so very, very weak. The edges on the lower plate, though, are 230, so if these do get hit, you will get nice bounces. When you're using the vehicle hauled down with the 9 degrees of gun depression, that upper plate becomes 540 thick. The only spot you can penetrate is that hatch right in front of the gun. Apart from that, good luck penetrating the Type 57, because you're not going to. The turret is upwards of 250 to 300 millimeters thick to 400. Yeah, the turret is completely rounded, and the hatch is a weak spot. You can see it there. It's about 81 millimeters thick. But when you're using it hauled down, well, the hatch basically disappears. So yeah, this is a very, very scary looking vehicle. It seems super solid at side scraping because of this very weird angled side. You can see it here, just on that flat part in the upper plate, it's upwards of 220 on that upper angle. So if you've got the tank at an angle like this, you'll actually get some very stupid bounces up here, but you can penetrate the lower part. So it's weird on the armor profile. It's a very, very weird design, as you can see. What do I think this tank's going to be like when it's released? Well, with its current statistics going for it and armor profile, this might just be the best tier 8 in the game yet. We're going to have to find out. But for heavies, this thing looks like it's a 252 on steroids. The sides are stupid. The frontal armor seems really, really troll. And oh boy, does this look like a scary tank. But it's not without weaknesses. This lower plate is very large. And even when you turn the tank to the side, then that lower plate, sure, becomes thick, 200 millimeters, but then this cutout becomes incredibly weak. So the tank does have weak spots. It has a lot of weak spots all over, but it also has a lot of troll spots that inexperienced players are going to bounce everywhere. I do think that this should be a tank on top of your list that you might want to keep an eye out for. Finally, we make our way onto the T-77, which looks extremely similar to the Tier 10 heavy tank, the 57 Heavy, but there's a bit of a difference. I was expecting this vehicle, when I was looking at it without stats, to have a 3-shell autoloader, pretty similar to a 57 Heavy, but it turns out it's a bit different. This is now a Bas-Châtillon Barrasque turned into a heavy tank. It has 2 shells in the clip, and in a matter of 3 seconds, it is able to deal 760 damage. That's pretty deadly. Like, yeah, it is the lowest clipping damage potential out of all the tier 8 heavies in the game. But you have to realize that for the other heavies, it takes 6 seconds to deal 900 damage, where this can get out 800 in a matter of 3 seconds. So if you're poking, let's say, an IS-5 and you even bleed 400, bam, bam, and you back up, that is a very quick amount of time to get out 760 damage, which definitely puts this tank very high on my radar for a fun vehicle to play in tier 8. Its damage per minute is okay at 1900, and I am running calibrated on this vehicle because it is an autoloader, and I would highly suggest for anybody out there to run calibrated on your auto-loading vehicles. So it's got very nice pen on the standard at 236 and the premium as well at 281. It'll be plenty to cut through tier 8 you're aiming at. It's definitely not the best penetration, but it's not the worst either. One thing that is the worst is its hit point pool, 1650. Wow, that is trash. I mean, if you compare that to any other tier 8, it's the worst. In fact, even some of the lower hit point heavies still have around 1800 base. So yeah, even if you're running improved assembly, you're sitting at 1749. We just talked about the Type 57 sitting at 2015 or something like that if you're running enhanced sandbags. Yeah, that's not great for the hit point pool, and it's definitely going to be a bit of a downside when you're playing this tank. You're going to have to be a little bit more cautious when bleeding hit points to enemy opponents. Make sure those shells do connect and penetrate. Another very bad thing is penetration loss over distance. It's 15%. That is terrible. Every 100 meters, you're losing 15% of your penetration. Imagine shooting at somebody 400 meters away. Yeah, goodbye to all of your penetration. That's gonna suck. So yeah, be very careful when shooting at people on distance with this tank, but as well, just bleeding hit points because you don't have as many compared to other tier 8s. But just like the T-57 Heavy, this tank has a very nice gun on handling and accuracy. It's got 2.17 seconds of aiming time, and pair that on with 0.326 dispersion, it's quite an accurate vehicle. When moving the tank, it's also got great on-movement dispersion factors. Only when rotating the turret is it pretty meh. But yeah, not bad overall, and it will be able to hit a lot of opponents on the move, especially judging that its turret traverse is insane at 36 degrees a second. So pretty quick on the turret traverse. That'll be able to snap anybody across the map. That's great. But mobility-wise, it's okay. It goes 38 kilometers per hour forward, but oh, there it is. American reverse speed, 12 kilometers per hour in reverse. Yeah, that's going to be a big issue. If you poke somebody, you got to be careful because you have to know that you only go 12 in reverse. So if it's an autoloader or something that can track you, you definitely want to make sure that you've got a bit of area and a bit of space to back up. But it's got a very solid power to weight ratio of 16.49, making it the second best in tier 8, but not for medium terrain. It's got meh terrain resistance. So I will say that the tank will achieve its top speed on most terrain, but it will definitely struggle on medium terrain. So it's weird. In water, it'll be fine, but on any sand, any dunes, or any off-road parts, yeah, you're going to struggle a bit trying to get up to 38 kilometers per hour. It's got terrible concealment and as well terrible traverse speed, but it is a heavy tank, so that is pretty expected. Finally, we're going to take a look at the armor profile, and it's okay. The upper plate is great. It's 261 millimeters. You're not going to pen the upper plate anywhere. The lower plate, great, 190 millimeters. I mean, if you angle that correctly, you can get some bounces on it from tier 7s and even maybe the occasional bounce from a tier 8 medium. But, just like the T-57 Heavy, that is where the big weakness is, the turret. Its turret is 127 millimeters to 140, so it's pretty weak. You just shoot at the base of the turret, and just like a 57 Heavy, you'll penetrate 80% of the time from apart the occasional auto ricochet here and there. So what I will say about this tank is it looks strong, looks very, very nice. It's still got that rounded hull, which means you'll get bounces on the side. I'm optimistic for this vehicle when it comes into the game. It's got a lot of downsides, which makes it look very balanced, but its gun also looks very, very solid. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. But other than that, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.